Hi, welcome to Scofield Farm. Today we're going to make pickles. I ferment my pickles and I wanted to share with you how I did them. So I thought I'd bring you along. I am going to pick a couple more pickling cucumbers from the garden. I have a bag of them inside and then we'll get started. Just a reminder from the very get-go, if you enjoy our videos, would you consider liking and commenting on our videos? That just helps YouTube show them to more people. And we would love to also have you subscribe so you know when we make new content. Okay, let's get started. All right, here's the back side of my cucumbers. Right here, we have a cucumber that I'm going to pick. Let's see. Woo! Doing it one-handed is not very easy. We have a couple more down here. This little one, that will work. This one's pretty little, but I actually am gonna go ahead and put it in the jar since we're doing it today. Okay, these are not left-handed shears, and I kind of try to make them work sometimes that way because I am left-handed. Twist it off. Did you know that cucumbers are prickly when you first pick them? So I just take them and I wipe them on my shorts to get the prickles out before I bring them inside. That's my little silly hack. And let's go inside and let's get started with our pickling. It's so easy. We do salt brine ferments. So easy. I would love to show you how. Real quick, wanted to show you our lemon cucumber vines. They're in a different part of the garden and they're almost like succession sown because they kept getting eaten. So we had to direct sow them and they're quite a bit behind, but they'll start producing pretty good once our pickling ones slow down. Really, even going to the garden if you don't eat a strawberry. I think it's like a requirement. I want to show you real fast how I'm going to use the head, flowering head of the dill to make my pickles. This is just as effective as the weed and the seeds. Do a couple of them to be in these jars. Over here. Okay, the ingredients I use salt. I like Redmond's real salt. I use whole black peppercorn. This is coriander seed, mustard seed, garlic. I use grape leaves to help with crispness. These are some peppers. These, let's see, this is a jalapeno. These are Santa Fe Grande, pickling cucumbers, and these are the dill flowering heads. And I like to use clamp jars and filtered water. Okay, so I mentioned clamp jars. The reason I do clamp jars is because with a ferment, you have to burp the jar, which means you have to let off the CO2 that builds up in the jar. A lot of people have different devices that they buy that go into lids that lets it off. The way clamp jar works is you have this rubber gasket here, and so the rubber gasket actually slightly moves to let out CO2 while not letting in any other air from the surrounding area that could have bacteria and stuff. So it's actually much less likely to mold in a clamp jar than it is in pretty much any other method of fermentation. I did a ton of research on fermentation for about 6 months before I started fermenting about a dozen years ago. And I found it both in research and also in experience, to be a very easy way to ferment and pickle things the old-fashioned natural way without a use of vinegar, but a use of salt instead. They call it lacto fermentation. That makes it sound like you use dairy, like lactose, but you don't. Now, can there be like whey used in certain ferments? Yes, but this is salt brine fermenting, and they call it lacto fermentation. Another thing I really like about clamp jars is, since I don't have to burp them, I can basically forget about them by putting them up in a dark cupboard. Now, I like to put them with like a little dish underneath, just in case there's a little bit of bubble over. Now, I can actually forget about them in the cupboard so well that sometimes I've left them up there to ferment too long. Too long is not dangerous. Too long just means more of the fermentation happens. They might be a little more sour. I find if I pull a fermentation a little early, it might be a little saltier, but the salt, like, somehow, I'm not going to give you the scientific reason right now, but it actually aids the fermentation. So longer it ferments, it actually can take the salty edge off, because it does seem like you put a lot of salt in it, but that is important for the preservation process. So I'm going to tell you that I am going to leave it in the cupboard for a week. Reality, it might be 6 days, it might be 10 days, it actually might be 2 weeks if it was me. You know, but I actually like sour pickles, so I don't mind. What I will recommend is that you taste it maybe around day 4 or 5, see if you like the flavor, and then you can leave it a day or 2 more, or even a week more if that's what you choose to do. Okay, we're gonna get started on how I actually do this. I have a ½ gallon of water here. It is filtered water. You wanna make sure your water is filtered, or that you boil water if it's from the tap with chlorine, and then you let it sit to cool, or you can leave water out from tap overnight so the chlorine evaporates, but you want something that is filtered or the chlorine has had time to evaporate. Now, for this much water, which is a ½ gallon, you're gonna wanna dissolve 5 tablespoons of real salt. Now, it's better to use Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, any salt that has not been bleached or ionized, that's how you say it, right? Ionized. So that you actually have the minerals and stuff in it. So I'm going to do 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I'm just gonna stir it. And with real salt, you're gonna actually still have some floating or sinking minerals. That's okay. I usually just kind of pour those off at the end into the jars because they're good to have in there. It gets a little cloudy, it will dissolve. I'm gonna set it aside so it can kind of dissolve on its own for a while. And then I'm gonna take my jars. Now, one thing that can happen with fermented pickles is they can get a little soft and not have that crunch that you are used to from grocery store pickles made with vinegar. So you can put grape leaves, you can also use oak leaves. Some people have grapevines at their house, some people have oak trees at their house. Most people have one or the other. The tannins that naturally occur in grape leaves and oak leaves actually help with crispiness in the pickles. So I put one on bottom and I usually put one on top. Depending on the size of the jar, I might put one in the middle. So I'm gonna set one in each of my jars. I have a feeling with the amount of cucumbers I have right now, I can make 2 jars of different sizes. And yeah, we'll see. Okay, then I have to do the little like Tetris game of putting my pickles in, my pickling cucumbers. I've done it with actually other types of cucumbers too. With lemon cucumbers, I like to do slices, sliced pickles, and one year we had just so many lemon cucumbers, more than pickling cucumbers, that's what I primarily pickled. Now we like in our pickles to have fresh garlic. I'm gonna do whole cloves, and I do use it both for the flavor of the pickles, but then I'll later use that fermented garlic in other things, like we make our own hummus. I might use fermented garlic in salsa, different things. It's actually a great way to preserve garlic because fermented foods will last virtually forever. Now, can you keep it out of the fridge? Yes. But as I said, the longer that it's at room temperature, it will get more and more sour. But it builds up a good bacteria that preserves it, so it's not going to go bad unless there is something else introduced into the pickles. I keep it in the fridge. Most people who ferment pickles of any type of veggies, when it is to the place they want it, the sourness they want it, they put it in the fridge. Now the reason why is the colder temperatures slow down the fermentation rate. So if I left it in the fridge for 5 years, let's say, it would be more sour than when I first put it in. But it won't be as sour as if I left it in the cupboard for 5 years. But this is an old-fashioned way of preserving food. So if push came to shove and our fridge went out, these would be okay. Does that make sense? You don't have to have electricity to have fermented food stay edible and safe. All right, let's go. We love peppers, we love garlic, we love dill, we like different spices. I experiment every time I do different spices. Like sometimes I'll forget to do mustard seed or coriander seed, which is actually the seeds from cilantro. I pretty much always do black peppercorn. So my amounts are just my way. They aren't a way that you have to do that exact amount. So I'm gonna peel this garlic. This is garlic actually just from our garden. We just harvested. Now, I'm probably gonna do quite a few cloves. And this is gonna be loud for you. So I might, here we go. Break some apart and then peel them off camera. One way that I peel the garlic is actually press with the dull side of a spoon, and it makes it a lot easier to get those skins to break loose. A lot of people may already know how to do that, but something I learned after I was married, so I'm passing that little tip along if you don't. Okay, now I'm gonna layer. I have like tons of garlic. This is about 2 heads of garlic. I'm gonna show you. But because we grow our own garlic, this is actually a wonderful way to use it. So I'm gonna put a handful in there, handful in there, and then I'm going to throw a couple of the peppers. Just grab them out of the basket. I'm gonna put some dill heads. The flowering dill heads are not just good for it, they're actually really pretty to be in the jar. And a little bit of dill weed that was on the sides of those flowering heads. Okay, now I'm gonna put some of our spices in. As I said, I don't have an exact amount for spices. This might be about, I don't know, a teaspoon or so of black peppercorn, a little bit more in the bigger jar. Coriander, I saved this coriander seed from my bulking cilantro. We like ground coriander. It's about maybe a half a teaspoon. We like ground coriander in some of our Asian cooking, and then it's great pickling spice. And then I can use it to plant more cilantro. And this mustard seed, just a little bit. I don't need it too mustardy, but it's a nice pickling spice. Ooh, all right. I'm gonna start layering some of the pickles and pepper. So I have pepper in there on the bottom. It's always Tetris trying to figure out how I want to best lay these in to fit what I can. The curved ones come to an advantage at this time because they like curve around other things. I'm gonna throw the pepper in there, pepper there, pepper here, so we don't waste space. trying to do the smaller of the cucumbers in the smaller jar because I just think I could probably fit more of them. Trying to do the bigger ones in here, and I'm kind of pressing down on them. Put another pepper in. Another pepper in. This one's gonna have to have a big one, I think. Okay, maybe I'll put in another one of the flowering heads. It's so pretty. Another flowering head over here. Flowering head over here. You can see it, right? Nice. And a little bit dill weed there. Oh, I hope these fit right. Okay. All right, we're gonna switch. See, this is why it's good to have a couple different size jars. This one doesn't want to fit at all. Switch around, switcherooski. Maybe like that. I don't know. And then this is gonna have to go over here. Now I'm trying to keep them all below the rim. See where the rim is? Because I like to give that airspace for the brine, and so I'm trying to figure out how to best get that in there where it's not above the rim. And then these will go on last. We'll have one go on top. I'm going to pour in the water. Hopefully I'm not going to spill. I'm actually going to get something to put underneath because I feel like I am going to spill. So let's just, not as pretty, but you know what? It's much smarter than spilling all over my table. Okay, let's see what I do here. Ooh, I did pretty good. I want about an inch of airspace at the top. That was not very level because that salad spinner bowl has a little knob in the middle, so they're like leaning over for me to pour it. Okay. We really had almost the exact amount of solution. Okay, then we're gonna put the leaf on top. It kind of helps hold everything down. Push it in there. I want everything I can below the brine. That way nothing is exposed to the air. The air is actually what can make it go bad. So I put a tiny bit more in just so that leaf is also all the way below and not floating up. So this one probably will bubble over, which is why I put it on some sort of like small plate or something. So exciting. This is our first pickles of the season because my kids have been eating pickling cucumbers with hummus instead of letting me pickle them because the other two varieties of cucumbers we grow are a bit behind because we had to replant them. So see how that grape leaf is on top there? It'll just hold stuff down, and then we'll clamp it and it will go in the cupboard. And up in the cupboard they go. It's not gorgeous, perfect solution. It's real life. I will check back on them in a week and they will be tasty for burgers. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that that was helpful to you. If you have never fermented any type of veggies, especially dill pickles before, this is a great one to save, to comment, share. I learned online. That's where I first learned, so to be able to share that knowledge with other people is awesome. Have a great day, and I will see you again really soon.